This is a really good sign, as in an interesting turn of events, the New York Rangers have remembered how to play hockey over the last 5 games. We're going to break that down as well as get into the next couple games could have huge implications on whether the Rangers make a trade this season or wait till the offseason. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 74% of you who watch these videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything going on with the New York Rangers, it's free. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Now, the New York Rangers look like they've remembered how to play hockey over the last 5 games. They picked up some pretty big wins. And yes, some of them are against some opponents that are kind of floundering near the bottom of the standings or, in free fall mode like the Boston Bruins. But there are some positives to take out of some of these games. And we're going to break down a couple players and why I think that, the next couple games could determine if Chris Drury makes a big blockbuster splash this season or if he waits to sign a very interesting top free agent this offseason, but we'll get into it. And one guy I want to focus on first is Ryan Lindgren and the whole debacle that's going on around him, because Larry Brooks tweeted this out yesterday. Here's something else. This bashing of Ryan Lindgren by at least a part of the fan base is disgraceful. Yes, he is diminished, but do you know why? Because he donated his body to the New York Rangers. That's why. And obviously blocking shots again last night, doing his thing. Ryan Lindgren laying his body on the line for the team. From Snark Messier, I'm fully convinced Ryan Lindgren is prepared to pass away every time he steps on the ice. He's prepared to put his body on the line for this team. He loves playing for this team, and I love him for it. And he's been a great player. And I think, coming into this season, I was like, this is still a great player. I'm so happy that they re-signed him. But this year, he's taken a noticeable step back in some areas, right? So I think that, some of the criticism is warranted towards Ryan Lindgren. And yes, he has put his body on the line. But at the same time, you don't want this to turn into a Dan Girardi type of situation. I see a lot of that out there as well, where, he's going to overstay his welcome to a degree where his body's falling apart. At the end of the day, the Rangers are a hockey team that wants to win, right? And I saw this tweet right under it, and it got a lot of attention. And, in Hartford right now, you have a lot of big bodies. And yes, a lot of them are young, but some of them have NHL experience, like Mancini. Robertson could get into the lineup soon, right? Like, maybe not soon, but next season for sure. I think he makes the jump to the NHL level. So there's a lot of guys waiting in the weeds to kind of make the jump. So I'm not sure how long Lindgren is going to be a New York Ranger for, past this season or even past this trade deadline, if there's any value attached to him, if any team would be interested in that player to make a playoff run. I think that's a different topic for a different video, but I think that some of these players could be an upgrade on Lindgren. Now, Miller, not too sure. We'll get into that. I've been very critical of Miller as well, but we'll certainly get into that in the rest of the video. But the overarching storyline for the last couple of games is that the New York Rangers look like they've remembered how to play hockey to some type of degree, right, at this point. And the game last night against the Devils was a good one. It was, tight checking. They played pretty well defensively. They tightened up way better than against Dallas. You had decent goaltending from Shesterkin, who made his return to the lineup. And a couple of your guys offensive guys are making better decisions, like Mika Zibanejad, just putting the puck on net. So I liked a lot of that. And of all people, Sam Carrick getting the overtime winner was hilarious to see, and then celebrating with the fans. Love to see that. But on the defensive side of the puck, Peter Laviolette said in the game against Dallas, that it just wasn't good enough. And they have to tighten up. And if they don't do that, they're going to be in big, big trouble. And this is from David. Has anyone noticed that the Rangers have been dropping to a 1-3-1 neutral zone trap a lot more now after the Christmas break? I've noticed that a few guys seem to be buying in a little bit more over the last couple games, right? In certain ways. And they're implementing more systems like this because, again, some things that were working last year are clearly not working this year. So try and change it up. They're running the 1-3-1. It worked to a degree last night. It worked to a degree against Dallas. Obviously, Miller at the end throwing the pizza through the middle. That was horrible. But I do think Miller deserves some flowers in this video. And before we get to that, Matt Rempe, saw a lot of comments, saw a lot of discussion online. Matt Rempe is a detriment to the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers are now 17-4-2 with Matt Rempe in the lineup all time. So that is I think that's a pretty good record. I'm not saying it's all because of him, but when he has played, they've won a lot more than they've lost. Even if you count the overtime losses, they're 17-6. So that's a pretty good record. Not too many fireworks last night. Didn't do too much, but that's okay. Quiet night for Matt Rempe is a good night for Matt Rempe. So I think that, we will be seeing more of him at the NHL level, and I'm glad that nothing got too out of hand there, and we will be seeing him back and not exiled from the NHL. But I wanted to give K'Andre Miller some flowers because we, as a fan base, have been, on him big time the last little while. And for good reason. I mean, that play against Dallas was inexcusable. It's unbelievable. It was terrible. But him and Will Borgen, since they've been put together, have been pretty good. And excuse the swearing in the tweet from NYR Louis, but they've been pretty good together if you look at the charts, right? Especially the last 5 games. And if you look at the impact score chart as well, K'Andre Miller, technically best player on the ice for the Rangers last night against the Devils. I wouldn't have put that on my bingo card. I wouldn't have bet on that. None of that, but it happened. Artemi Panarin's up there too. Adam Fox had a great game, so on and so forth, right? The guys that you expect to be at the top or should be at the top on paper were at the top last night. I think that's a good sign. So yes, they're beating teams like Chicago and Boston who are in free fall mode, but you're in a game close, a couple of mistakes against the Dallas Stars. It's a different game. You played really well in that game. And then this game against the Devils, you play really well again. You get the win in overtime. The Devils are a great team, right? So I think that there's some positives to pull from this, and it can't be all negative all season long. So we got to talk about the plays when they do come up in this way. So I think K'Andre Miller has been not great this season. He hasn't taken the steps that fans would have liked to see, right? Like, I think that a lot of fans were expecting him to be this, top 4 defenseman, this solidified top 4 defenseman by this point in his career. And he's kind of in and out of that, right? And he could even arguably be in and out of the lineup for a guy like Zach Jones, in my opinion, at this point. Coaching staff doesn't see that. Last night proves that, that shouldn't be the case. On paper, it should be like last night all the time. But K'Andre Miller this season hasn't taken the steps that Rangers fans would like to see. And I think the coaching staff, for that matter, as well. So he's got to continue to do this, more of this, keep it simple. I think keeping it simple is just the most important thing for them. I feel like the Rangers just overcomplicate so much when they're out there. So just continuing to keep it simple. I want to see if he can build off of a performance like this, especially a bounce back performance like this, because he had such a bad game against the Dallas Stars. Really weird decisions, especially the one at the end for the turnover. I mean, you just hold that or make a different play around the boards, your team maybe wins that game, right? So in regulation as well. So I think that it was a tough play, and he bounced back in this game, and I think that was a great thing to say. And obviously Panarin's had a great season. I think Zibanejad bouncing back a little bit. He's been playing really well since around Christmas as well, so that's encouraging. Now, the last thing I'll mention before we wrap up here is I believe that the next couple games, their schedule coming up is pretty interesting. It doesn't get much easier, but I think it's interesting in the way of if they continue to play this way and like they have been the last couple games, at least be competitive, they're in games or winning some games, I think that could really turn things around for Chris Drury, and he might change his mind. He might say, okay, we're only a few points out of a wild card here. We actually could still make the playoffs. I'm not going to sell everything off. So I think the next couple games actually have a huge implications on what's going to happen later this season in terms of who's getting moved, who's not getting moved. Again, the next couple games are going to be crucial. If they win a couple or they look like they're in games, I don't know if Chris Drury is going to pull the trigger on selling off everybody. If they lose a bunch of games and they look horrible again, they regress back to what we've seen majority of the season, I could see him selling off assets and going after a huge fish in the offseason in Mikko Rantanen, maybe even Mitch Marner. I could see that happening, a complete retool. But let me know in the comments what you think of that. I think the next couple games are really going to determine what the Rangers do. And I know it sounds ridiculous. I think on paper, the most logical thing to do would be to sell off all the expiring contracts and retool in the offseason and get going again next year. But if they continue to play well, I mean, the Eastern Conference this year is very weird. Teams are in and out of the playoff spots, the wildcard spots every single night. There's teams in and out of the Atlantic Division spots every single night. So the Rangers still, it's, unlikely they make the playoffs, but it's not impossible. So I think that the next couple of games have major implications on what they're going to do next season. Not just next season, later this season. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let me know what you think about the Rangers play as of late, because to me, it's a pretty good sign. You would like to see the Rangers play better because on paper, they have the talent, they have the skill to do it. But let me know what you think. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.